what I will do, I will share a little bit our experience as CIMEA, as the Italian National Information Center on Recognition, as Peter already introduced. And I will first start with giving a little bit of, let's say, policy perspective. We usually say that policy is a mix of practices and, let's say, more vision, more political vision. So I will give you a little bit of policy context, and then I will share some practices from our side that could be interesting to discuss together. So first of all, look into the policy context. You know that in Europe, we have the European Higher Education Area. That is a intergovernmental process where governments voluntarily, on a voluntary basis, decide to work together on the topic of higher education. So far, we have 49 countries part of the project. And periodically, usually every 4 years, we do have a ministerial conference. At the end of the last ministerial conference, where all the ministers in charge of higher education meet, we have a communique. The last meeting was organized in Italy. So the communique is called Rome Communique, from the name of the Italian capital. And in this Rome Communique, where ministers in charge of higher education sign, there is a specific commitment on microcredential, on working on the topic of smaller unit of learning. And the ministers asked to explore how and to what extent this smaller flexible unit, including those leading to microcredential, can be defined, developed, implemented, and recognized by our higher education institution. Also, the European Union is working. That is, of course, different and separate from the European Higher Education Area. There are, and all the key documents from the European Union are focusing on microcredential. For instance, in the Digital Education Action Plan, to support relevance, quality, and inclusiveness of European education. So microcredentials are seen as a way to support this. They are also seen as a way to diversify student population and to make higher education more inclusive. And in the European Skills Agenda, they are also seen as a way to upskill and reskill professionals. For this reason, the microcredentials have been included in the European Strategy for University that was released this year in January 2022. And microcredentials are actually seen also as a way to develop skill and competencies to, let's say, support the digital and green transition. And the Commission did the ad hoc document. We have been working 2 years on the topic of microcredential to develop a European approach to microcredential that now has ended in a recommendation, and I will share in a moment a few information. But now, beyond the policy document, I mean, what is the understanding? What is the common understanding? So let's start saying that the microcredentials are not a new concept. I mean, the idea that higher education can provide smaller courses, smaller unit of learning, it's not a new one in itself. For instance, in many European countries, there are no specific regulation on microcredential, but regulation allows for this, for provision of smaller courses. Some examples: short courses is targeted at labor market needs, courses to gain skill and competencies, for instance, for the teaching profession, single courses or modules within a full degree, or, for instance, the courses in the framework of lifelong learning. But there is something different. And what we see as different is that there is, let's say, new boost and a shift in this vision. The learner is put at the center, focusing on skill and competencies rather than on the credential itself. We see a tendency on supporting flexibilization and modularization of higher education. And I would like to make clear that the common understanding and consensus is that microcredentials should not be alternative, but complementary to full degree. They are not meant to substitute, rather to complement. They are also seen as an opportunity to strengthen cooperation between higher education institutions or between higher education institution and other education provider, and also as a way to quickly transfer research result to, let's say, for the benefit of society. So if we want to say in one sentence, microcredentials are seen as an opportunity to rethink higher education role in lifelong learning. This is the proposal of Council recommendation on microcredential. I will not go too much into this, just to say that in the recommendation, in the European Union recommendation, there is a definition of microcredential that I think it is important because represent the consensus we have reached so far in the defining microcredential. So you can read it here. Microcredential means the record of the learning outcomes that the learner has acquired following a small volume of learning. And these learning outcomes have been assessed against transparent and clearly defined standard. It is interesting also to see what are the constitutive elements of the credential: identification of the learner, title of the microcredential, country, region of the issuer, awarding body, learning outcomes, notional workload, type of assessment, this is very important, type of quality assurance, etc. So who provides microcredential? They can be higher education institution, but also employer, international organization, public bodies. It could be the result of a cooperation between university, business, media, professional association, or of course, the most famous are the very famous learning platform that provide microcredential. Why? Microcredential are meant to reskill and upskill as a way to offer lifelong learning, to diversify the large student population, for instance, opening up to adult learner or lifelong learner. The idea is to have an inclusive approach, etc. I would like to invite you to have a look to this very interesting project, the Microball project, that looks into microcredential from the higher education perspective and try to see how microcredential can be quality assured, recognized, and referred to a qualification framework. Those are in a nutshell the result of the Microball project. So for instance, from a quality assurance point of view, the common understanding is that they cannot be each microcredential should be quality assured, but the focus should be on institutional quality assurance. The point on recognition is that if the information are transparently provided, microcredential can be assessed if in line with the, let's say, international principle of recognition in the European region will be according to the Lisbon Recognition Convention. If not, they can still be recognized according to recognition of prior learning procedure. And here you can see a point also on qualification framework that whenever possible, microcredential should be referred to the qualification framework. Microcredential are object of analysis and of discussion. So you can see here the most recent work from UNESCO toward the common definition microcredential that try to make, let's say, what is the point of consensus and of common understanding regarding the definition of microcredential at global level. But I also would like to recall this document that is Beyond Limits, that was launched at the end of the World Higher Education Conference, UNESCO World Higher Education Conference in Barcelona in May, where microcredential are actually, let's say, they are one of the focus of this document, linked to lifelong learning approach as a way to serve the diverse education need of youth and adults. Okay, now let's briefly give you some elements of practice. We saw policies, now let's see on practices and what is our experience. So the first experience is one that we have as CIMEA, as a national center. We have been offering 3 courses, so 3 micro-credentials to admission officers and people in charge of international relation in higher education institutions. So basically, to all the people that at different level have responsibility in recognition, we have been offering a training course for them as a micro-credential. One in 2020, we started with the COVID, one in 2021, and one in 2022. And let's say, we say that we wanted to reach, to take 2 birds with 1 stone. So on one side, we do training to upskill professionals that are working in higher education institution recognition. On the other side, we are providing, and of course, micro-credentials are part of the curricula, but also we are awarding a micro-credential. So this is the best way to create awareness about micro-credential. So this is one example. The second example is about projects. And I also would like to say that we are glad that we will work together with Philippines in the Micro Casa project, Erasmus Plus project, that was assessed as a good project. So we will work on this, Italy, Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia, to develop some micro-credential. So this will be a topic for further work together. For instance, we are also working on micro-credential together with industries in another project. And also we are working on micro-credential in the European University Alliances that are an initiative launched by the European Commission to create consortia of higher education institutions. And this higher education institution can offer short learning opportunities, micro-credential, that can be assessed by the other higher education institution. So those are just a few examples of what we are doing in Italy regarding micro-credential. So project, learning courses, and also I would like to mention that micro-credential have not specific regulation with this name, but Italy since 90s has regulation for short learning opportunities. So actually since 90s, we are higher education institution are offering courses that can be covered by the umbrella term of micro-credential. And one last point that I would like to stress, it's digitalization. So digitalization can play quite an interesting role in the conversation about micro-credential, because digitalization of credential, and this is not only for micro-credential, can support recognition at supporting portability, transparency, and reliability of information, and of course can support verification of authenticity of qualification. So the micro-credential we awarded on blockchain through our Diplomi ecosystem. So this is how the credential look like. There is a micro-credential and a micro-credential supplement with all the elements displayed according to the European standard. So now to conclude, really, 4 keywords to sum up what, let's say, I shared. The first keyword is lifelong learning. So the idea is that micro-credentials are not a new concept as such, but what is new is the idea to, let's say, that micro-credentials cover a large variety, a large diversity of lifelong learning provision. So the idea is to put all this diversity into a more let's say, understandable and comprehensive whole. So this is the first point. And of course, they are not a goal in themselves, but they are the service of the educational and professional development of individuals. Cooperation is another keyword between higher education institutions, but also between higher education institutions and other education providers, industry, other public sector authority, and other sector of society. And transparency is the third keyword. Transparent information is key to support recognition of all higher education qualification and also of micro-credential. As I said, if all the information are there in a transparent way, it is possible to recognize micro-credential according to, let's say, international standard for fair recognition. If not, they can be recognized according to recognition of prior learning. And also, regarding transparency, any CNARC center, let's say information center for recognition information, can provide support and certified transparency of information. And finally, recognition. As I said, micro-credential can be recognized. This is our common understanding. So this will be all from my side. Thank you.